Hello and welcome to another episode of No Prize Podcast. I am the virtual Professor Bud Young, and with me, as always, from across the pond is Johnny the Machine Hughes. How are you, Johnny?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. This is my first foray into video podcasting today, so
Yeah.
I might be a little self-conscious on how I look, but I'm actually more self-conscious about how you look because I'm looking at you. I can only see myself in the corner, but I have a big full screen of Johnny of Machine. So
that's not a problem, surely.
no, it's not. So, I mean, it's kind of like we're right in your living room when you're watching this. So
Yeah, it's kind of the Jack Vetriano on the wall and the dodgy lamp over there and stuff. So and comic books to hand.
Oh, see, I wish I had some visual aids.
Yeah, well, what can I say? I have a drawer down here, and this is kind of where my current reading plan goes. So, at any given time, there is always at least 15 comic books in that drawer.
Oh.
So, a mix of old stuff, new stuff. So, I'm going through a bit of an X-Men phase at the moment. So, I've got some of the recent stuff. You know, the whole before the House of X destroyed everything. Got a couple more of those in there. There we go. Picked up. Then I've got X-Men First Class, little mini-series.
I remember.
Is it any good?
Decent, as I recall.
Good, because I haven't read any of that, so I'm looking forward to that. And then because you're doing X-Men, there you go.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
that's an old school.
Take it like it is. There you go.
Yeah.
Bought it purely because it's got Madeline Pryor on, and you know I'm a sucker for redheads. So
Where are you getting your comics these days? Are you online buying them up or?
Yeah, it's online. I'm online. I've had these for a while. These have just been sat in my to read pile for a while. There you go.
There you go.
Is that the first Jim Lee? 257?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah, cool. And then I bought a raft of the Morrison run because it was cheap. So I was like, "Ooh, not sure I like that cover of Bishop, but you know."
No, but.
And Sylvester was going through some sort of crazy stage on this one, I think.
That was the sexy beefcake butt.
Yeah, he must have done that whilst he was working on what do you call it, Witchblade, because Witchblade was quite a sexy character. Is that's Nightcrawler, of course?
Of course, yes.
Of course. Beast, actual.
Is that Dark Beast or was that actual Beast?
Not sure. Find out when I read it, I guess.
Yes.
So these books come from like an era when I kind of dropped out of comics for a while. So even though they're old, they'll be new to me. So that's pretty good.
I would say the Grant Morrison run is definitely worth reading. You know,
I've read some of it when we went to not last time, the time before we went to Mexico. Before I'd gone, I popped into like a local charity shop and I managed to pick up 3 graphic novels of the Grant Morrison stuff for like £2 each, so like a couple of bucks. So I'm sat by the pool reading them, but of course it's so damn hot. When I opened it up, all the pages went. Pew, 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 pew.
Oh no!
I was like, no, I was not best happy. So the last time we went, I bought a couple of graphic novels to take with me. They did not leave the room. They stayed air conditioned, so I could read the damn thing. Nobody is melting my glue. That's how that works. You know, it's kind of as it is. How are you? What are you reading at the moment?
So I'll show you a book that I got. I got this a few months ago. So this is. Can you see that? No,
yeah.
This is the Stan Lee Universe. It's a collection of rare Stan Lee interviews.
Cool.
and it was put together by Danny Fingeroth, who we talked to
Oh yeah, we
several
spoke
months
to him
ago.
about it ages. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember.
So that's all collected interviews and rare photographs, and that's collected by him and Roy Thomas, and put together. So there's some stuff in there that hasn't seen the light of day in forever. So it's really some cool stuff. So if you like Stan Lee, it's really highly recommended. So
I think I've got a lot of time for Stanley. We've had this conversation in the past. I think he gets a hard time from the creator crowd for like not giving credit where credit was due and all that sort of stuff. But I find, and this kind of links into some of the censorship stuff that Disney were doing, sometimes it's really hard to take today's modern interpretation of what should have been and then run that as a rule 50 years ago.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, some of the conversations that we have about comics today, and we're trying to kind of add, like when I talk to some of the older creators, and I've had this conversation with Don McGregor, and you've talked to a bunch of creators all the time too. But when I talk, because I love talking to the old school guys, and when I talk to a Don McGregor or a Steve Englehart, someone that from the 70s, or someone that was back then, and even Roy Thomas, when I had a conversation with him, you can't really talk to any of them about what's going on today. You know, it's all about what was acceptable back then. And especially it's even more like today when you talk to Don McGregor about Black Panther and about the racism and everything that he had to deal with just to get those books published back in the 70s. That is a kind of a conversation that stands up today, and it's a conversation that you can have today because it's still, I think it's still relevant today. But it does kind of shine a light on what was going on back then. But I think it was more ignorance and more of that's kind of the way things were back then.
Yeah.
I
think there's that sense of this is just the way it is, so put up with it.
Yeah.
That's not just comics though. That's people vilify comics for sexy women on the covers and sexy blokes and all that. Nobody ever complains to MTV about what's her face being half naked dancing on videos, do they? Not at all. No way. It's always the bad evil comic books. Yeah.
No.
Get your own house in order.
So, and we were talking earlier about like, what do we talk about now that there hasn't been comic books in the last 6 weeks? And, the way that I look at it is that, I mean, comics have been going on for over 100 years. We could talk about anything all day long in the comics industry, what's going on now, what kind of steps Marvel or DC, what do they take when they go back in? I know we talked about DC is coming back out starting next week.
I think it's the week after, I think. First week of May.
To some outrage from the comic book community, right? From the stores.
Yeah,
but
I can understand why they're doing it. I totally get it. We've got to get back to making money. The economy has got to do that. Well, that's not just comic books. That's every sort of industry across the way. What I will say is that I find it really ridiculous that the first book they're putting out is a reprint, like the third printing of the recent Batman 89.
Oh, really?
You're like, okay, so of the first books, that's one of them. Really, that just well done for like really totally, annoying the fans. Because if you've been out new comics for 6 weeks and the first thing you're going to sell is a book that's already been out once and twice because there's been 2 printings already. It's just, how to fumble the ball at the 1 yard line as you're going in for the game-winning touchdown.
That's right. But, so when I think about what is the comics landscape going to look like weeks from now or months from now, when we were talking earlier about the movies being pushed back, months, perhaps movies aren't even going to be coming out. Like, I mean, New Mutants, who knows when that's coming out now.
To be fair, that wasn't a Corona thing. That was always going to be dodgy.
Right. Well, that's true as well. But I mean, we're talking about like Black Widow's big
Yeah.
tentpole summer movie. Now we're not getting that till who knows when, November, December. And that's if they even allow movie theaters to open up here in America, right? Because
Agreed.
right now I mean, they're talking about reopening the states and cities and local stuff, but they're still not going to allow large public gatherings, right? So we're going to have sports with empty stadiums. We're going to have so where does that leave movie theaters, right? I mean, you can't if you can't have a collection of people in a theater. What are we going to do? They have to figure that out. Someone actually came up with the like maybe bringing drive-ins back.
Oh, that's a good call.
Have
you heard what the airlines are doing?
No, I haven't.
So airlines at the moment, they're going to start booking seats again in, I think it's the middle of June. At least from our point of view, from the UK point of view, what you're going to be able to do is book the 2 seats at the side, or the 3 seats at the side, and then the other 3 seats at the other side, and the middle aisle is going to be completely empty.
Really?
So if you might, when you see going a jet plane, normally there's like the 3 rows.
Yeah.
Side, middle. Nobody's in the middle.
Interesting.
They're just going to go down the sides.
Huh. That's still not 6 feet away, though.
Yeah. What I got a question is, on the sides, there's 3 seats. Do you really want to be, that's like you, your wife, and somebody else. I mean, that's a party somewhere, but maybe not on an airplane.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I mean, I know that I'm thinking about flying anywhere for the next year or so, just to. I mean, we've all been stuck in our houses now for a month and a half, going on 2 months now, and just trying to figure out what we're doing to keep ourselves busy. I'm not thinking about traveling or doing anything. I'm thinking about getting back to work at some point.
I'm heading to Mexico September. We were supposed to go at the end of May, but it's been cancelled, so we had to move it. So,
oh goodness.
So what you reading? So I mean, all this. Yeah, you've been using Marvel Universe.
Yes,
Marvel Universe. Is that what it's
Marvel
called?
Unlimited. So, so I've actually did a combination of websites, right? Because Marvel Unlimited gives you all the books you can read. Pretty much, you'll never be finished if you want to start. There's almost every title there. There's huge runs of everything. They don't have everything, right? So there are some books that you can't get on there, but I decided several weeks ago, since we weren't getting new comics, I was going to go back and start at the dawn of Marvel Comics. I was going to start at Fantastic Four #1, and I was going to read every relevant Marvel issue, until all this starts, and I don't have time to read anything because I'm trying to keep up with the new stuff. But I can tell you, psychologically, what I wanted to do is I wanted to feel how the fans must have felt back in the 60s when these characters were first appearing, right? And you were getting Fantastic Four, and then you had a couple of issues of Fantastic Four, and then when Fantastic Four #2 hit the stands, all of a sudden, in a little bit of Tales to Astonish, you had the first appearance of Hank Pym, not as Ant-Man, but he shrunk himself, and it was more of a horror story, because back then, when you had everything was monster comics. Monster comics are romance comics, and even if you recall the cover to Fantastic Four #1, kind of makes you think a monster comic, right? It might be a monster comic, especially because you had the Thing on there too, and he was a kind of a monster. And the Human Torch looks like he could have been. Yeah, right. He fit right in.
That thing coming out of the pavement with the
right. So that kind of maybe fooled everybody. And I was actually looking when I was like, oh, we're going to talk about old school today, and I was looking at what was on the shelves for DC on the same month that Fantastic Four #1 hit the shelf.
This will be interesting. Go for it.
Yeah. So you're looking, and DC had their Action Comics and Superman. So the Action Comics had a Lex Luthor Superman cover with this little kryptonite monster coming at Superman, and
Nope.
Batman had Bruce Wayne's secret identity revealed. Yeah, right.
That's horror.
Yeah. But they also, like the DC's library at that point, Hawkman, Flash, The Atom, Wonder Woman. Justice League was very early, and so it was like number 7 or 8 when Fantastic Four #1 came out. So
Because there's that parallel, isn't there?
yeah,
The old story is that DC decided to do a team book.
Mhm.
They decided that Justice Society was a little bit hoity-toity, so they changed it to Justice League. They just revamped the Flash. They just revamped Green Lantern, so they put them in there. And then obviously Bats, Superman, and all the popular characters, right? So apart from Martian Manhunter, I suppose, was a backup tale at the time. So they made the team, off they went. Because of the success of it, there's a story going around that, is it Martin Goldman, who used to be the owner? Goodman, sorry. Yes. Who was the owner of Marvel at the time, or Timely as it was. He was having a round of golf with someone from DC, and they were talking the talk, saying, hey, we're doing this Justice League book, it's great. And that's when he got on the phone to Stan Lee and said, hey, man, do a team book, get it sorted. And boom, the result was Fantastic Four #1.
Yep.
That's the popular theory for us comic historians, I guess.
Well, and Stan Lee was going through his own issues at the time of whether or not he wanted to continue to write comics, and it was his wife that said, just do it.
Yeah.
Do
what you want and see what happens. Yeah.
Yep.
It's a good shout.
So, what I was trying to think of, and especially this morning, I was trying to think of how the fans must have felt, because looking at the library of what DC Comics, what was on the shelf at the time, a lot of it was like the same old story, right? It was a kind of the formulaic, and I'm not taking anything away from Julie Schwartz over at DC, who was running everything over there. It was a massive force in the comics industry in the early 60s, late 50s too. But when Fantastic Four #1 hit the shelves, and you're thinking that maybe this is maybe a monster book, and picking it up and realizing it's a superhero book at the end of it, and it looked, it looked good. Jack Kirby, very early Kirby too, like not early, but he still was evolving his style, right? And then reading. And it was bi-monthly then, right? So you had the first issue, and then you had a couple of months to sit on it before the second issue came out. And that was when you realized, okay, so Marvel's coming out with this superhero stuff. And then when the Hank Pym came out at that same month, and Tales to Astonish, you didn't really know that they were gonna turn him into a superhero. That was kind of like the end of like a horror story. He gets trapped in the anthill, because he shrinks himself down, and that's a horrifying story when you look at it. But the other books at the time too, Tales of Suspense, Journey into Mystery, those books were monster books. And
yeah, totally. We talk about so many things like first appearance of a character, right?
Yeah.
For that period of time, you can turn around and say, oh yeah, who can I pick? So everyone knows Batman's from Detective 27. Everyone knows that, right? And everyone knows Fantastic Four first appeared in Fantastic Four #1. Fine. So people then think, so the first appearance of Iron Man must be Iron Man #1.
Yeah.
No.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Or even Spider-Man.
Amazing Fantasy.
Amazing Fantasy number 15, right?
15. So all these like kind of books have this sort of like non sequitur name that regular non-comic book fans don't realize. Does that make sense? So even across the way, you have things like Showcase, which is for I think was it 22
for Flash? Green Lantern.
Yeah. So All Star Comics was the Justice Society.
Yep.
Yeah. What's going on there? So that history, that kind of transition for Marvel away from those kind of monster horror books is seen through the fact that the cover, Journey into Mystery, that's Thor's book, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you're kind of thinking, what's going on here? And then, of course, as things progress and the Avengers comes out, that's when I think the Avengers is a much misrepresented book, because that's the. I mean, don't get me wrong, Fantastic Four kickstarted it, yeah. Spider-Man, double thumbs up, but it's the Avengers that kind of coalesces the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
Because it's the Avengers that turn around and say, right, we've got Giant Man, we've got the Wasp, we've got Iron Man, we've got Hulk, we've got Thor, and then of course the pièce de résistance is when they bring Captain back, and from that point on, for me, as good as Fantastic Four is from the get-go, yeah, and as good as say issues 48 through 50 are with the Galactus story and the introduction of Black Panther, for me, it's the introduction of Captain America into the Avengers that solidifies the Marvel universe.
To me, yeah. So I know that they say that like the beginning of the Marvel Age, Fantastic Four #1. I always look at Avengers #4 as being kind of like that's when you kind of bring back the history, right? And
definitely.
And well, and they did bring back the history with Submariner and Fantastic Four #4.
Yeah, to an extent.
But that really wasn't the same thing, because they really treated Submariner as a villain.
Yeah, he's a pitch hitter. He's a pitch hitter. Submariner's a pitch hitter. He's like, oh, we need a villain. Who can we have? I know. Let's put Submariner in it. And it's like, you know, and it's that's kind of the Marvel vibe back then. You know, he was the true. You're absolutely right, because there's history and legacy to him, but he is the original sort of like protagonist, isn't he? No, sorry, antagonist.
Even back in his own book in the 40s, he was antagonistic. When he was
a pain in the ass.
If you read him in the 40s, and that was one of the things when I went back and read some Golden Age Submariners, I was like, oh wow, he was always a bit of a dick. Like even from his first appearance, he was always like, I hate the surface world, you know. And I was like, oh wow, I didn't realize it back then. I thought that was kind of like the role that Stan and Jack had put him in Fantastic Four, but no, he was always like that. He was just always a jerk. But but that was kind of the mindset that I wanted to have going into kind of, I don't want to say rediscovering all of these old Silver Age Marvels, but that's kind of like that's kind of like what it is.
Yeah. Because we take these characters so much for granted.
Yes,
we absolutely do, and sometimes it's good to go back and, you know, some of these books, some of them are going to be cornball. There's no getting away from it.
Of course, yes.
But there's cornball now, so it's not like every book that comes out is the best book, as we've found out many a time. But these are the foundations of the industry and of the storytelling medium that we have grown to love. All right?
Right.
So you can't go... For everybody who likes Star Trek The Next Generation, you've got to go back and watch Captain Kirk. It's the rules. It's what you got to do. Without Captain Kirk, there's no Captain Picard. All right? So without Stan Lee, without Jack Kirby, without Steve Ditko, without John Romita Sr., Gil Kane, all these people, these Ross Andrews later on in the late 60s, early 70s, all these characters, all these creators are just, they're setting us up. They're our journey steps.
Yes.
So yeah, it is kind of like rediscovering, because we know what it looks like. You know, if someone said to me Fantastic Four #1, I can picture it in my head like that. When I go back and read it, I still have a stupid grin on my face, even though I know what's going to happen. You know, and it's the same with Amazing Fantasy 15. When I read the reprints of that, I know it's, you know. And you talk about characters, you know, back then Peter Parker, he was a nerd. He was a bit of a dick as well.
You know, and so I wanted to bring Spider-Man up too, because that was when you're looking at the dawn of the Marvel Universe, and you're looking at Fantastic Four, and then followed several months later by Spider-Man #1, with the Hulk #1 in between, right? Because the Hulk appeared first before Spider-Man, but Spider-Man was such a different feel for the book, and it was really easy to forget that Stan was writing everything, right? So because the Fantastic Four book had a unique feel, and so did Spider-Man, but then the rest of the Marvel Universe kind of felt almost kind of the same, because you had Thor with Journey into Mystery, you had Tales of Suspense with Iron Man, and then they introduced Doctor Strange, which was its own little thing for a while. Which I don't know if it was slow to get his fan base up, but Doctor Strange was kind of that weird, trippy, like 8 pages in the back of Strange Tales, right? Right. So, but it was hard to really remember that Stan was writing pretty much everything, you know, and but he was able to give Spider-Man, especially early on with Amazing Fantasy 15, which was that 8-page backup origin story, and then maybe 6 to 8 months later, starting off with Amazing Spider-Man #1, which, I mean, Spider-Man #1 got the shot in the arm with the guest appearance by the Fantastic Four in the second story.
Love that story.
So that and that in itself kind of said, we're all tied together here. You could go over DC and you could read a Flash comic or a Superman comic or a Batman comic and not know that they all existed in the same universe.
Agreed.
Here, right at the beginning, you're like, okay, they're all together, and they're in New York City. They're not in Metropolis. They're not in Gotham City. They're not in these fictional cities.
I like that about Marvel. I've always liked the fact that, they have tried their best to make sure that, when Spider-Woman's in San Francisco, it looks like San Francisco.
Yes.
Yeah. When Spider-Man's in New York, it looks like New York. It's way forward. But I remember when Peter Parker was doing his Webs tour back in Spectacular Spider-Man, and he's trying to swing around California, but there's nowhere to stick to. There's no tall buildings. He's like, what do I do? So that I like the fact that Marvel uses their version of the real world, although they still haven't got Britain down right yet. But that's another thing.
Well, nobody's ever been there.
I've been there.
Well,
Son,
I don't know.
So I like that. I like the idea that for New Yorkers and for loads of Americans that can pick up a Spider-Man comic of that era, open it up, and say, "Oh yeah, that looks like such and such. That looks like So for sure. I really like that. Yeah. It helps authenticate it without having to think, right, Gotham's supposed to be, and Metropolis is supposed to be, and Keystone's supposed to be, and Coast City's supposed to. The trademark's gone on, but it's kind of.
You just gotta remember where the Flash Museum is in Central City, and that's as long as you know it's there.
It's left at Albuquerque, right?
Yeah. Flash can get there in between panels, so that's cool.
Yeah.
But I want to talk to a second. I know we talked about Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Hulk, and that's all in 1962. And so you kind of have Fantastic Four kind of growing a little bit, right? Their fan base, and then you had Spider-Man coming out. 2 very different feeling books. Hulk had its own feel too. Hulk was very different, but Hulk never really kind of built that fan base up, right? Yeah. And so you find out like 6 issues in, Hulk gets canceled, and now Hulk is being a guest star in pretty much everything, right?
Yeah.
For a little bit. 1963, that's the year that Marvel, that Stan and Jack just did. I mean, every month was a major billion-dollar franchise they're creating.
It is now, but back then, I mean,
right.
Daredevil wasn't particularly great.
No,
X-Men wasn't particularly great.
X-Men was bad.
Yeah, for me, X-Men didn't get good. The first time X-Men got really good was Roy Thomas and Neil Adams.
Right.
That's when
was 1968. So that's like 7 years after they first appeared. So
And after that storyline, it turned into reprints.
yeah,
That's how bad the book was.
yep.
And you look at Neil Adams now as a comic book, I guess, legend.
Yes.
You know, I'll say this. This is my hill that I will stand on. Neil Adams' X-Men work, for me, is better than his Batman work.
I agree with you
So
100%. So, I think a lot of Neil's Marvel stuff really jumped out.
definitely.
And when you see it Batman, because Batman's always dark and has that look. But I mean, with X-Men or even some Avengers work that he did, he could use all the colors in the rainbow.
Yeah.
So it's good.
To
So
light the tone, to light the. I recently there was a Marvel Tales series that came out last year to celebrate the 80 years of Marvel and stuff like that. I picked up the X-Men one because it had the Neil Adams stuff in it.
yes.
You know, I was like, it also had Fallen Angels, and I was like, I'm not reading that. But it had an Extinction Agenda issue, and I was like, oh, that's a little bit odd to be in there, but it is what it is. But no, I picked it up purely for the Neil Adams stuff because it is that good. Yeah.
So 1963, you had Fantastic Four, Amazing Spider-Man, and the Hulk was in the middle of its 6-issue run in the beginning of 1963. But you had Iron Man, Thor started in Journey into Mystery, along with the first appearance of Spider-Man, which I think a lot of people missed, right? So Spider-Man made his first appearance in Amazing Fantasy number 15 alongside Thor that very same month, and Thor continued monthly as well. But I don't know how much of a fan base he had at the beginning, because it was all Thor versus Loki for the first several months. But then they introduced Iron Man early in 1963. Tales to Astonish came back with Ant-Man, and then introduced the Wasp, and then
I've never been an Ant-Man fan. Never been
the Tales to Astonish stories not that strong. When your main villain is the Whirlwind, who has not even become Whirlwind yet, he's the Human Top, and his helmet looks like a big onion. It's actually like a top. And then you had the Porcupine. Some of the really cheesy Silver Age Marvel villains came out of Giant Man. Strange Tales was being published as well, with Human Torch in a solo series, which probably not that great, right?
It harkens back to although it's a different Human Torch, of course, it harkens back to that whole legacy thing, because there was a Human Torch and Toro before the Fantastic Four, so it kind of builds on the nostalgia. But
they even had Carl Burgos actually came back and did a Human Torch story in Strange Tales on an anniversary issue, which at that point they actually had to have Stan Lee say, "Hey, it's Carl Burgos. He created the Human Torch, back in the 40s." Because I'm sure you don't remember, right? Yeah. So it was interesting reading that. And then, of course, you had Daredevil in late 1963 in the X-Men. Around the same, X-Men and Avengers came out the same week, the same month, the first issues. So who's the winner there? The Avengers was the winner early.
Massively, and you got to think maybe too much of a good thing. There's only so much. Even back then, there's only so much money you can spend on comic books.
And back then, Marvel had that had a distribution issue, right? So they were actually being distributed by DC, right?
Yeah.
They had their contract. Contract was that they could put out X amount of superhero books a month, which was 8, wasn't it? It was 8. Yeah. So that's where you got some of the better, when you look at Tales to Astonish, Strange Tales, and Tales of Suspense, where you had to cram 2 stories in each issue. And that's when you started getting, Strange Tales had Human Torch, and then Doctor Strange at the end there. Tales of Suspense had Iron Man, and later on Captain America. And then you had Tales to Astonish, which was Giant Man, but then added the Hulk in afterwards at the end, and then jettisoned Giant Man totally by the end of 1964 for Nick Fury. So
That turned into a great move in the 70s. Jim Steranko.
yeah.
Yeah. So, I suppose it tries to cater for everybody. And you mentioned earlier how some of the books were bi-monthly. That's
Yes.
to accommodate the eight book a month thing.
Yeah.
So they could have Fantastic Four in January and March, and then something else will come out in February and
Oh yeah.
April.
I just looking at Marvel's slate in like 1962, where it was a couple of superhero books, but always they had like 3 different Millie the Model titles, or there was romance comics and then there was war comics. They had so they got around that. They had Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos, which launched in 1963, which was a war comic. So they got around that superhero thing,
yeah.
even though Nick Fury was featured prominently in the Marvel universe, and Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos happened in the Marvel universe, still a war comic.
I always used to get confused as a kid because you had Sergeant Rock on one and you had Sergeant Fury on the other. And I swear to God, they're the same character.
Oh,
Back when I was a kid, I was like, what? But
yeah. Well, right. And even today, when I'm looking at, I was going month by month, and I'm sitting there looking. It's like they had Captain Savage and his Leatherneck Raiders back in the early '70s, and
they're like an NFL team now.
I was looking at it going, so they had Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos being published continuously, and then came out with another book called Captain Savage and his Leatherneck Raiders. I'm like, Marvel should have sued themselves,
Definition of character.
right? So, but it's very interesting when I go back and just take a look at it, and then just feeling like I was feeling when I got it when they brought back Captain America, because they brought Cap back for a Strange Tales issue several months before that, in a Human Torch story, where the Captain America that came back wasn't really Captain America. It was some robber that found Captain America's outfit, and yeah, it was really, really silly. And but then at the end of that issue, there was this little blurb by Stan that said, yeah, of course, we just gauged this villain this issue to see if you guys really want to see Captain America come back, so let us know. And then, of course, 3 or 4 months later, he's back in the Avengers. So, I think the fan base was vocal even back then.
Definitely.
Of who they wanted to see. So
bring back the Cap.
All right, so let's take a break here real quick, and then we'll come back, and we're going to do Marvel Jeopardy.
Jeopardy!
Beyond the world of DC and Marvel, there is a world that opens the imagination in ways that you've never known. The world of indie comics is here, with comic books that you didn't even know existed. Thanks to Dodgy, Al Mega, and the random dude Josh, you too will have your eyes open to new books in the indie comic universe. Check out Flipside Focus, only on the Undercover Capes podcast network.
And we're back. Thank you for sticking with us. And I know we're gonna have a impromptu episode of Marvel Jeopardy, and Johnny's gonna try to stump me, and he usually does a really, really good job.
Well, this is revenge. This is what you got to think, because I remember the first time I was on this show many, 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 many years ago, and it was just you and me, and we were going to have a couple of guys on, and you had a quiz at the same time, and you tried to stump me with things like who were the alternative Fantastic Four. I couldn't remember the Hulk. I had Spider-Man, Wolverine, and Ghost Rider, and I was like, "You son of a..." So hey, this is kind of payback. That's how this works.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So
I think I'm up for it. I think I'm up for it.
Okay, you're not.
Your
topics are. Are you ready? Your topics
sure, ready. I'm ready.
The Replacements, not the Avengers, and then my favorite one, Make Mine Marvel.
Uh-oh.
And then there's a bonus question at the end. Where would you like to go first?
Let's do the Replacements. For how many questions are there in each category?
5.
All right, so I'll take the replacements for 1.
1. This AC/DC song title may help you find a replacement as Guardian. I'll admit there's a poetic license in this, but you'll get it. Well, I'll give you the answer, you'll get it.
A replacement as Guardian? Is it Better Ray Bill?
Thunderstrike.
Oh, Thunderstruck. I get it. Okay. All right, so now that we know the theme.
Oh, class. Do you know Thunderstrike's first appearance by any chance?
No, I don't. It was in Thor, and it was issue. I want to say it was probably in the 300s. It was probably like 382. How close am I?
391.
Oh man, that was so close.
That was really close. I was really impressed there. Well done.
All right.
Well done. All right, cool. You didn't get the question, so one to me. Right.
Yeah, I guess you get
two?
you get the discard points. Yes, let's do replacements for 2.
All right. A female spider, the first who wasn't Jessica Drew.
The female, so that would be the female Spider-Woman that appeared in Secret Wars.
What's her name?
Her name is Carpenter.
Oh, right.
Julia Carpenter. Julia Carpenter.
Is it Karen Carpenter?
Julia Carpenter.
Which book did she give?
She appeared in the Secret Wars. And it was Secret Wars number 7? 6. All right.
And if we were playing properly, I would have expected to have the full answer. That's Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars. I'll have you know.
Oh.
Right, here we go. For 3, a clone story that actually makes sense, but is she the best at what she does?
Oh, would that be X-23?
Perfect. Well done.
Right.
Good shout.
Thank you.
What book?
Oh man, when she first appeared, was it NYX number 1?
3.
Shit. All right.
Well, you're doing really well. It gets really hard now. Really sorry about this.
Okay.
Natasha was not quite the replacement Black Widow. So I'm looking, instead of a replacement, I'm looking for the first one.
The first Black Widow? The only other Black Widow that I know is the Yelena Belova. She's not the first one though. She's the
replacement. Yeah.
Right.
So back in the 40s, there was a character called Claire Voyant in Mystic Comics number 4. She had the title Black Widow first.
Oh,
there you go.
Wasn't Marvel though? Was it?
Yeah.
Mystic Comics number 4. And her name was Claire Voyant.
Claire Voyant. Yeah.
Oh my God. Horrible.
Blame my wife for that one. All right. Last question. I walked the highways and byways of America with my own replacement.
I walked the highways and byways
of America with my own replacement. We talked about this book last time we were doing the pod.
We did?
Uh-huh.
Walk the highways and byways. I want to say that walking the highways and byways is a shout out to the Incredible Hulk.
I didn't think of it like that way, no, but it's not that now.
I don't know what the answer to that.
Okay, so I was thinking it's Nomad, the Jack Monroe character who toured America with a replacement Bucky. You remember the Fabian Nicosia book?
Yes, I do.
There you go. Answer the question.
Okay, and you know who worked on that book was Mark McKenna, who you've interviewed before. Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Jack Monroe's first, because Jack Monroe was a Bucky as well at one point. So yeah, Jack Monroe, his first appearance was
Captain America, and it was, I want to say it was like issue like 200 and oh, really? Was it way before that? Okay, I don't know then because I don't remember
153.
as Jack Monroe.
Yeah. Straight up. Yeah, from September 92. Yeah.
September what?
1972.
Oh, really?
You have to check it out on your Marvel Unlimited, won't you?
So was Jack Monroe created by Steve Englehart?
He was indeed, yes.
Okay, I'm gonna have to. I did not know that. I thought
You're going to ring Steve up and say, "Hey, Steve, one of your creators just did me over on Jeopardy. Just wait, I'll see you next time, mate."
He probably wouldn't have even remembered he created Jack Monroe.
Right, here we go. Not the Avengers or make mine Marvel.
Not the Avengers.
All right. Okay, one of the very first teams to take on Spider-Man, at least annually.
That would be the Sinister Six.
Perfect. Well done. I had to put the annual bit on it because otherwise someone would say, "Oh, it's the Enforcers." I was like, "Well, yeah, actually that is true," but I was going for Sinister Six. Well done. Sinister Six first appearances, as everyone knows.
Amazing Spider-Man Annual #1.
Yes, well done. Congratulations. Woo!
Thank you very much.
This question's just for you, so you better get this right. Possibly the most used villain team over the last couple of years, much to the annoyance of the Professor.
That would be the Wrecking Crew.
Yes.
Who show up almost monthly.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't know what their first appearance is. It was in
the Defenders comic, volume 1.
Really? In Defenders?
Yeah.
Why do I think as the Wrecking Crew? Right? The Wrecker appeared before that.
That's just what it says on the website. So.
All right, I believe the Wrecker appeared in
Journey
of Mystery first.
The Wrecking Crew.
Okay.
Inspired by the TV show The Avengers, this group has Warren Worthington III and Brian Braddock as members. Maybe the language is better. Maybe I'll change that. You ready? Yeah. Inspired by the TV show The Avengers, this club has Warren Worthington III and Brian Braddock as members.
Oh, then that would be the Hellfire Club.
Hellfire Club. Well done. From which book? First appearance?
It would be Uncanny X-Men number 120.
129.
Damn it.
All right.
I knew I was close.
There's a jump here again. Led by Superior, this group wanted to create a utopia where women ruled. The puzzled look. He's like, what? Led by Superior, this group wanted to create a utopia where women ruled.
Oh, man. I can't remember the name of the group. I don't know.
The Femizons.
The Femizons. And where were they? Where was their first appearance, Johnny?
Captain America 386.
That was a Mark Gruenwald.
It was a Mark Gruenwald book. Yes, well done.
I should have known that.
You should.
I believe it. And was that also Ron? I believe it was Ron Lim that did the art for that.
I've got to say, I love that area of Captain America.
The bi-weekly runs, those summer bi-weekly runs. Yeah.
I love how him and Diamondback became a couple.
Well, it's because it was out of left field, That
was something. It just worked so well. Yeah, I really like that. All right, last one for this question. Right, this group once counted Moon Boy, Dragon Man, and Howard the Duck in their ranks.
Moon Boy and Devil Dinosaur.
Mm-hmm. No, not Devil Dinosaur. Moon Boy, Dragon Man, and Howard the Duck.
I want to say it's like the Future Foundation, but it could be the Fallen Angels. No?
Circus of Crime. from Incredible Hulk. The Incredible Hulk number 3.
From what?
Incredible Hulk number 3 was their first appearance as a Circus of Crime, but all of those characters were in the team at some point.
Not at the same time.
Not at the same time. No, not at the same time. Because I thought Hawkeye was in this. Because wasn't Hawkeye supposedly like a bad guy when he first started?
He was, but the circus that he belonged to was not the Circus of Crime.
Which circus did he belong to then?
He was just a circus. It was a random circus.
Okay. As always is. All right, make mine Marvel.
Make mine Marvel. Is this your most evil category, Johnny?
Actually, to be fair, I think the replacement ones was harder, but I just like some of the questions on this.
Yes.
All right, the current Miss.
The current Miss.
Mm-hmm.
Miss
Remember
Marvel.
What the title? Well, you tell me. What's the answer?
The current Miss.
So the topic is make mine Marvel. The current Miss
would be Kamala Khan.
Well done. First appearance of is
Ms. Marvel number 1.
Captain Marvel number 14.
Really?
Okay. Yeah. The second captain from New Orleans.
That would be Monica Rambeau, Captain Marvel from. Her first appearance was in Avengers Annual. No. This is straight up Avenger. Oh wait, was it a different annual? Spider-Man Annual. It was a Spider-Man Annual.
It was.
But don't I? Oh man, this is Spider-Man Annual is like number 15 or something.
16.
I knew it was up there too because I knew it's like Spider-Man Annuals were like there was like 25 of them. So
they were decent. Some of those were really good.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, did you know Mark Bagley's first work for Spider-Man was on the Amazing Spider-Man Annual where he's talking about the Evolutionary Wars? What's that? It might be 2021. That's his first work on Spider-Man. There you go.
Really?
Uh-huh.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Once a Ms., a captain, and a colonel.
That would be Carol Danvers.
First appearance of? Excuse me.
I don't know when Carol first appeared. Did she appear in the Captain Marvel book, right? Was it like Captain Marvel number 24?
Marvel Superheroes number 13 from 1968. It surprised me when I saw this. I was like, she's been around since 68. When did the Miss Marvel book came out? That was in the late 70s. She's been around a whole decade before she became.
That's it, but not as a superhero.
Yeah, but still.
Yeah.
During the age of X-Men, they weren't uncanny or amazing.
Can you ask the question again? Yeah. What was it?
During the age of X-Men, they weren't uncanny or amazing. I threw this in for Lucas because it's quite a recent thing, so I know some of my questions are quite old. So.
Was it because they were marvelous?
Yes! Who were marvelous?
The marvelous.
It's easier than you think.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to kick myself probably.
Yeah, that's right. It's the Marvelous X-Men. Well done.
Marvelous X-Men?
Yeah, that was it.
Was there a book called Marvelous X-Men? Did we read that? Did we review it?
I think we avoided a lot of the Age of X books, to be fair.
You're right.
Because the answer is obviously we know what issue the first X-Men appeared in. The question for the bonus points was how many issues were there of the Marvelous X-Men?
How many issues of the Marvelous X-Men?
Yep.
5.
Well done. Spot on. This Marvel boy has a secret identity that fits more in the distinguished competition comics?
The Marvel Boy?
This Marvel boy has a secret identity that fits more in the Distinguished Competition comics.
Do you mean, but when you say Marvel Boy, do you mean Marvel Boy?
It's Marvel boy.
Oh, okay. It's, so Marvel Boy would have been. Do I have to come up with his secret identity?
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow. I don't think I know Marvel Boy's secret identity.
It's Robert Grayson.
No.
Hence, Distinguished Competition. See, Grayson is obviously...
Robert Grayson.
Should have been a Robin, shouldn't he? Like Dick Grayson.
Oh, yeah. So this is the original Marvel Boy.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah.
Oh, all right, okay.
But Marvel Boy #1, which came out in December 1960. And then the final big bonus question. I want your knee-jerk answer on this. I know you've been reading shed loads of old books.
That's
right?
true. Yeah.
All right. So here we go. Are you ready?
Yes.
You're going to get 3 seconds and I want an answer. Okay?
Got it.
Including legacy numbering, this is the longest running Marvel comic series.
Fantastic Four.
Wrong. Absolutely wrong. I knew you'd say that.
Wait, including legacy numbering? Oh, is it? It's the Hulk.
Amazing Spider-Man.
Oh, it's because of all the times it went bi-weekly and all that stuff. Nah.
Yeah, and it got cancelled.
Okay, yeah. So what issue would that be with legacy numbering? What is the amazing?
I have no idea. I don't know. But check the last issue of Amazing Spider-Man we looked at. That'll tell you on there.
Right, and and obviously because Fantastic Four wasn't published for like 5 years.
There you go. See.
I kicked myself.
I've got live one. I've got
it. You got me.
Yeah.
You got me with the 3 second rule.
Because I knew if you thought about it, you'd work it out.
I would, because I was, and you framed it with I was reading a lot of old books, so I wasn't thinking of recent history. So.
Is it? Yes, I am evil. It is true.
You walked me into it.
To be fair, I asked my wife the same question. She came up with X-Men. I didn't think that was a bad shout.
Oh yeah. Well, X-Men was like bi-weekly for a long time.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
I guess it could come up with that.
Well, you've got to think from what? There's a whole bunch of reprints in there, and of course they went bi-monthly and all that sort of usual kerfuffle. So cool. But there you go. There's the Jeopardy. Yeah. Lucas has managed to save himself. Don't worry, Lucas. Your turn next, my friend.
We're gonna have to make sure that that Lucas takes part, and maybe you can even throw some prices at him, or hot books.
Ooh.
Yeah. So like what's the most expensive Marvel comic on the out there right now?
Just think how many copies of Spider-Man 1 of Todd McFarlane is there currently in existence?
In my attic or in circulation?
I mean in your attic. I bet there's too many.
There's a few anyway. Cuz you had to do the whole black cover, open it to read it, and
I think at the time I think I had 3.
I have a couple that are still sealed in the cellophane wrapping that they came in, and I think I got the black cover, the regular cover, the whatever.
Well, have you heard the news before we go?
No. What's the news?
The news is we're scheduled to interview none other than Todd McFarlane.
No. Who, you and Al?
It's on the chat. Go add yourself into the list, man. Go for it. It's in the speak to Al because it's going to be Wednesday. I'm thinking it's 2 p.m. EST at the top of my head. I have to check my diary. But yeah, Todd McFarlane.
That's huge. That's
talk about
huge.
Kickstartering these figures, but I'm sure we can get a few Spider-Man stuff in there. The Duke
So
apparently
that's
likes to talk. So,
well, I know we talked about this last year after Stan died. Was who is the one person in the industry that you could probably think of that might be able to kind of take over the torch, to be that person in the industry to to
be the
to
figurehead.
represent comics, to be the figurehead, and it was Todd McFarlane basically is the guy. So
Okay, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I would probably ask him. I'm sure he's heard of that, but what's his thoughts on the industry?
Yeah.
Especially now, everything's changing. So he
Well,
must.
Yeah, I mean, he's made his money, lost his money, made it again. So let's see how it goes. So,
Awesome.
but no,
That's huge.
speak to
What a
Al.
great opportunity. Yeah,
Speak
what a
to Al.
great opportunity. Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, get some questions, and we are there. Yeah. So Todd, what made you draw the webs back under his armpits?
There you go. I'll ask some stupid, benign question. Something that doesn't matter. All right. So that's going to do it for this episode of No Prize Podcast. And we'll be back in 2 weeks, hopefully with maybe some news about new books coming out at some point. But if not, we're going to spend maybe we're going to do the 70s explosion of Marvel Comics with with the amount of stuff that came out in the 70s.
It's huge. Yeah.
And what was good and what was bad.
Marvel Team Up. Very good.
And we'll see. Well, there's some bad stuff in there too.
Yeah, it is.
So, but some good stuff. So we'll see. They were smoking some good stuff in the early 70s.
No comment. No comment.
All right. So I'm actually hoping that we don't have new books in 2 weeks, so we can talk about Marvel in the 70s.
Maybe we should. You know what? Maybe we should do a special feature. We could do a special feature.
All right.
Why don't the listeners let us know? Drop comments on the feed. Let us know what you want. We can always do we can do a one-off. Let's talk about Marvel history. I'm all for that.
Excellent. All right. So we will see you in 2 weeks, and thanks for coming in. And what are we on? We're on YouTube now. Is that what?
Yeah, this is so you can listen to the audio through the usual places, and of course, this video will be on YouTube later in the week.
Fabulous. All right. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Adios.